Now let's talk about how SwiftUI actually updates those views when the data change. And before we dive into that too much, we have to talk about how SwiftUI uses structs for its views versus classes for its views, like in UIKit. So looking at UIKit, for example, like a UI button, right? You see that inherits from UI view. Inherits being the key word there, because that means UI button has all the features and functionalities of a UI view that they probably don't need all of that. So there's a lot of bloat that gets inherited, right? It kind of makes the classes a little more heavier. Well, in SwiftUI, a struct just conforms the view, like there's no inheritance going on. So in SwiftUI, the view structs are super lightweight and performant. Like I said, they get created and destroyed and re-rendered all the time in SwiftUI. And the reason that's possible is because they are super lightweight structs. So that's the key piece of information you need to know before we dive into the view trees and the diffing and all that stuff. So I'm going to illustrate the view trees in two ways, one in code and then one visually after we do it in code, just to hopefully that helps you make the connection. So in our code here, our weather app, just our content view, I don't know if you have these code folding ribbons on the side, but if you go to Xcode, preferences, text editing, and then code folding ribbon, make sure you check that box if you want to do what I'm doing. If you just want to watch, that's fine. Anyway, so what these code folding ribbons do is I can like fold up the code. So I'm going to fold up my VStack, right? Remember, the VStack is what holds all of our elements. So let's fold up that VStack to illustrate this tree here. So if you click that arrow, that folds it up. And the reason I want to do that is to show you, like, the base of our view tree is our Z stack, right? And our Z stack has two elements. It has our background view, which is on the bottom of the Z stack, and then it has our V stack, which is on the top, right? That holds all of our elements. So that is kind of the root of our tree, right? This Z stack. You know, off to the left, we can put our background. Off to the right, we can put our V stack, and that V stack would, you know, break down into more branches on that tree. And those branches of the VStack tree, as you can see, if I unfold it, you know, would be the city text view, the main weather status view, another HStack, which again would have its own branches. So you can see this view tree can get a little complex as you have a lot of, you know, branches. I'm going to try to keep this as simple and high level as possible to not confuse you. So, you know, if we were to fold up the HStack there, you know, that shows all the elements of the view stack. And for the purpose of this explanation, this is as deep into the tree as I'm going to go, again, as to not overwhelm and confuse. So that is it kind of in code, and hopefully you can kind of see, you know, how the branches of the tree branch out. If you can't, I'm going to do it visually, and hopefully that'll help. So here in the high level visual, I just cut out sections of the screen to help you visualize it, right? I figured that might help to see how this the view tree is structured. And again, to be clear, in reality, it's a bit more complicated than this because there's a lot more sub branches, but keeping it at a high level to explain the point. Right? Because the point of this video and where we're at in SwiftUI fundamentals, the point is not for you to understand all the complex stuff, SwiftUI's, you know, tree diffing algorithm, all that stuff. Like, if you want to dive into that, you know, that comes later, right? That's not what you teach in the fundamentals course. If you leave this video just understanding how the view tree works, how SwiftUI compares the view trees, and then only updates the views that are necessary, like, that's great. That's what you need to know at this stage of the game. All right, so let's use this visual to explain what I just said about how SwiftUI only changes what's different. So you see the view tree here. Well, when an update happens, there's an identical view tree that gets created. This is why we have to declare all the rules of our UI up front, is so the trees are exactly the same. And that is for performance reasons. To get a little technical, and look, I'm not gonna bullshit you. I'm not gonna act like I understand SwiftUI's tree diffing algorithm. I know the basics of what's going on, so I'm gonna explain that to you. So the reason the trees are exactly the same is for performance reasons, right? If the trees were different, now that algorithm would have a much, much higher runtime, right? However, if the trees are exactly the same, the diffing algorithm between the two view trees can be very, very fast. So again, that is why we declare all the possibilities of our UI up front. That way the view trees are the same for diffing algorithm purposes. Okay, so what happens when we flip our isNight from true to false, or false to true, vice versa? When that Boolean changes, SwiftUI goes through the view tree to see what changed, and then when it gets to a view where that data affects it, it triggers the body property of the view, right? Remember how every view has that body, and it will re-render and re-update that based on the new data. So let's walk through our tree real quick to see how that would play out, right? So we start at the top of the VStack. Our isNight changed to true. Well, we'll go down to the left here, look at our background color. Okay, that view is affected by isNight being true. So we'll trigger the body to re-render. It's going to re-render. It's going to show the right colors based on the isNight Boolean. Good to go. That view got redrawn. Then if we go down the other branch of the tree into our VStack, we see we have the city name. Well, that didn't change, so that's not going to get redrawn. Then we go down to our VStack that holds our main weather status. Well, that did get affected by the Boolean, right? We're going to show the moon and the stars, not the cloud and the sun. So that view's body will get triggered, re-rendered, and show up differently on the screen. And then down the rest of the VStack, right, our HStack of days, that doesn't change, our button doesn't change, so none of that gets re-triggered. So that is how SwiftUI only updates like what changed. So even if all the structs and the views are getting destroyed and recreated, the body's not firing off unless there's a difference. So like I said, this gets much more complex under the hood, but at a high level, what you should know now, the key takeaways are that there is a view tree structure. The view trees have to be the same. That's why we have to declare all the possibilities up front in our UI. And then when the data change, SwiftUI will go down that view tree, look to see what views are affected by that change, and then re-render just those views. So that's the big picture takeaway from this section. If you understand that, you're good to go for a Swift beginner.